if the board feels it appropriate to move to shift things further out due to scheduling, then we have the ability to do that.
I can just speak to that because since I've been on the board, we've been scheduling the next meeting, but it seems like applicant has good intentions, but they haven't really met them. And I think that makes our work not as efficient because we possibly could have some blocks where we could get through our backlog. So I think it would be good to try that. I get that deadlines and timelines are important about the whole process. But particularly when there's a lot of pages like on one of the particular things and many open items, you can almost be sure in 2 weeks that's not going to be settled, right? So maybe 4 weeks, which would be a better shot.
What's your sense of where these are, Peter, in terms of their review?
My sense is that
Chestnut Street. What's your thought about where it's at as far as the third-party review and addressing those issues?
Through the conversations that I've had, I feel like they're fairly far along. The 100 Chestnut and the 501. The 501 is also going through the review process with our wastewater sewer engineer. But the 100 Chestnut and the 501 seem to be moving along. They're definitely not sitting on anything. The McDonald's, which is when we get there, which is the 225 Pond Street, I know they were just waiting for answers regarding the operator, McDonald's, to kind of get back to them to take a tack one way or the other. So I think if we were going to shift into an application out to another meeting, I think that the McDonald's 225 may be the one to go out to that distance, because also they're, I know, following up conservation as well on a couple issues. So
Okay.
That's where I kind of, if I can read the tea leaves, if I'm reading the tea leaves correctly, that's what I can kind of information I can bring to the board.
Right, because I do feel like there was also remaining discussion both on 100 Chestnut and 501, probably pertaining to design review committee things that we didn't get through that whole text. So I think there's other things besides third-party review as well.
Mm-hmm.
So for this one, I would say for the two larger projects, I would say to get them on July 29th, and anything smaller to push them out to July 28th. And for anything smaller or anything new that comes up, that goes on the first meeting in August.
Mm-hmm.
Does that, anyone else have input on that?
I was just wondering, so mention that, like, I know one of those had many open items and then they're working through, but like if we get it sounded like either the third party or the applicant was going to give an update, but if we got that like on a Wednesday before the planning board meeting Thursday, I think everyone here works full time. It's very, very, very difficult to try to get through.
Yeah, we don't look at it. It has to be here. We have to receive it before the weekend, or it's not. We don't look at it.
Okay.
We made that policy. We made that policy fairly on public hearings. We made that policy fairly firm. There are some little exceptions, but to that level of detail, if we don't have new material to discuss prior to the weekend, if it hasn't been sent out to the board prior to the weekend, it gets continued. Because I agree, I don't have time to pick it up during the week either.
In the 100 Chestnut Street, which was continued late in the week, they did submit material last week, and that was uploaded online and circulated. So they did do some. They did where we're going for that, but also these applicants, they have engineers on the call, right? And so which costs money, right? Because they're working for them as well. So I think without having a solid response for that engineering letter, with a couple items that may need to go back and forth, they opted for continuance.
Any other comments on scheduling? All right. If not, I will make a motion. If anyone else can jump in for these motions, I'm just doing it for time and efficiency. But I will make a motion to continue the 100 Chestnut Street site plan review to July 28th at 7:15.
I'll second it.
And a roll call vote.
Aye.
Anna Tesmanitsky, aye.
Marcelo Hona, aye.
Catherine Jersey guy.
And Trisha Kendall, aye. So that is continued to July 28th. Okay, next one is the public hearing for 225 Pond Street special permit and site plan review. As Peter already said, they continued for some little back and forth with corporate McDonald's. That's right, Peter?
Yeah.
And they also have some things to do with Conservation Commission. So this is one that I think we could, push out to the first meeting in August and deal with the other larger projects at the end of July. Any thoughts on that?
I have a comment update. So I live pretty close to there, and I drove by, and the cut for the Mass DOT is actually quite a ways back. So I know that was a little bit in the party report, I believe, but I think we want to, maybe it's not our obligation, but maybe give them a heads up that that's going to have to be worked out. Because you can see where that we're adding like a multi-use path on the side of the road, and it's cut quite a ways back.
Okay. No, I'll make a note to the engineer. I think I've shared the plans with the engineer already. But I can follow up on that.
You mean the engineer, the plans for 120, the 126 project in
Yeah,
general?
Fuller Engineering, who's representing McDonald's, I've shared them, and he has reviewed the plans for the 126 project.
Okay.
So obviously, I agree with you, Kate. Those should be taken into consideration with the new plans for the McDonald's. And obviously,
Yeah, and up to date, what we've seen, I don't believe they did, because the third-party engineer commented about that turnout should stay curved, and that's now pretty much gone. So I think they have some work to do.
Okay.
So Peter, you will coordinate the parties there and make sure that they have the information they need to make sure the information that we receive the next time is up to date according with the state drawings for 126.
Yes, 100%.
Okay. All right. Any other comments before looking to continue this to, I'm not sure what it would be in August 11th in there somewhere?
Actually, that is.
Yeah, I think I guessed correctly. I think it's the 11th.
You are the 12th.
Well,
Yeah.
Yeah.
12th is Friday.
I'm in 21. I had the wrong year. You're right, August 11th.
All right. Okay, August 11th. Okay, so if there's no other comments, I will make a motion to continue the public hearing for 225 Pond Street special permit and site plan review to August 11th at 7:15 p.m. Is there a
I'll
second?
second that.
And a roll call vote.
Aye.
Anna Tesmanitsky, aye.
Marcelo Hona, aye.
Catherine Jersey guy.
And Trisha Kendall, aye. So that is continued until August. All right, one more. Item number 5, public hearing for 501 Pond Street special permit and site plan review. Peter, can you just tell us, I think it's similar to 100 Chestnut, but
Yeah, very similar to 100 Chestnut Street. Engineering, their engineers going back and putting together engineering letter The engineering plans are also, they're also finalizing their wastewater plans, which need to be reviewed by our third-party review engineer, Greg Eldridge from Healy and Newell. And that also would bring into play the implementation of that missing sewer link. So those are still due to be submitted. And regarding the site itself with stormwater and other aspects, a review letter and a response letter is in the works.
Okay, obviously we'll have no discussion on this because Anna is in the room, but does anyone have a question about procedure with this project? Or feel that we need to kick Anna out to discuss anything?
Just if any of the like partial reviews come in, would we get those as soon as they get here, or do we wait until they're done with the whole package?
Nope.
Do you want me to,
Everything-
why don't I just step out in case, it sounds like it could get
All right, that's fine.
substantial, and I'll
I'll text.
Yeah.
Okay. Yep, I got my phone.
So what was your question, Kevin? Can you repeat that?
Just, like if they finish the civil review package, what they're still, or landscaping, but they're still working on the drainage, would we get that ahead of time, or do they write one letter?
Whatever they submit, I'll send it out to you guys. Whatever they submit, I'll post and circulate to the planning board.
Okay. I just remember there being a lot of comments on that one, so
Yeah, no, there's a lot of comments.
might be
and-
a hefty document coming back to us.
I think they generally send it all out at one time is from past projects. Is that right, Peter,
They
typically?
typically do, and I think that's why we're in this kind of waiting game is they're trying to put this whole package together. A lot of times also on some items, they'll just contact the engineer directly, right? And I'll be CC'd to the email, or sometimes it takes a quick phone call just to get the two engineers on the same page kind of working together, which is which is appropriate, for the two professionals to do. So, but yes, as things do get submitted, they get posted online.
Yeah, and I also think for this one, for 501, that we did obviously talk about, we have the design review committee as a part of the last discussion, but I'm not sure we made it through, really getting through all of those, their comments, which I think we received kind of late in the game. So, so there would be, even if all the engineering isn't back, there's probably still design material that we want to discuss on that one as well.
Mhm.
I think that was one of the meetings where we did have a pretty full agenda, if I remember right. So we probably had more time to spend on each project. So.
I have a question on parking, but I think it's probably has to wait till the continued hearing.
If it's a bit of information you want to ask Peter to pass on to the applicant or to the engineer, you could do that.
Okay. Yeah, so I was looking at the that Pond Street mixed-use overlay, and it actually goes by our regular parking requirements. And I think I'm reading it correctly that there's like, when in banks of like 25 spots, there's supposed to be, it's an island. So it's just not supposed to be a heat sink, right? Like we're supposed to be a green community heading toward net zero. And our bylaws have not been updated, obviously, to reflect those things, but at least somebody was thoughtful enough to have a bit of that in there. So if I'm remembering correctly, parking obviously is stuffed there already, and I don't believe that's addressed. And so I think probably I would assume the board would support that, and we probably should flag that before it gets too far along.
I think I saw it in the initial third-party review.
Mhm.
So they have a lot to work out with parking, but that did get caught by our engineer.
I saw it too.
Okay, so it's definitely on the list of things to talk about when it comes back to planning board. So Peter, if you just want to double check that it's in there, that's going to come back, that discussion, I assume a discussion like that is coming back to us. It's not going to be worked by the two engineers, say.
Yeah, and there's going to be some discussion. There's going to be some things that are going to be worked out, and then there's going to be discussion, open item discussions, which are going to be decisions that have to be made by the planning board.
So there's,
but yeah.
there's things that are about the engineering and drainage and things that are worked up by the engineers. There are things that have to do with our bylaws, obviously, that come back directly to us for our own decision.
Correct. And the letter will cite that it's, it's, the letter is to cite that there's that to raise the flag, to ask the question. And then it's
Okay.
for the planning board to discuss if it cannot be worked out between the two meetings. But yes, I will take care of that, and I will look into that. I did too see that in the letter, so, but I can follow up with the applicant and have a quick discussion about that.
Okay, great. Any other questions or comments on 501 Pond? All right, then I will entertain a motion. Well, I would say I will make a motion to continue the 501 Pond Street special permit and site plan review to July 28th at 7:15.
I'll second that.
And a roll call vote.
Deepa Venkata.
Marcelo Hona, aye.
Trisha, oh, Kevin.
Kevin McLean, aye.
And Trisha Kendall, aye. So that continued to July 28th. All right, Peter, you want to text Anna?
Yep.
Good. Here is Anna.
Great. All right, moving on. Item number 6 is 12 Pond Street exterior colors. This is kind of going forward slowly. At the last meeting, I had reported, Deepa and I talked about how we had gone out, being the only 2 current board members who were involved with that part of the project. We had gone out with the many renderings provided by the applicant. We had tried to look at them on site, looking at the real colors as they are versus the printed renderings. And we had one more suggestion for the applicant. I kind of typed those notes up, gave it to Peter, he gave it to the applicant, and he did return some renderings, but again, they were kind of late in the game for Peter, who was out of town, to get them to us to be able to review them for this meeting. And my goal here is that when we look at 12 Pond Street, it'd be great to have a thorough discussion about it where everyone is prepared, everyone has all the information, and we don't have it run on meeting per meeting per meeting. So before we do that, I wanted to have kind of the accurate renderings of the additional option that Deepa and I talked about to be before the committee, but we didn't get those materials soon enough to say, yep, he's providing what Deepa and I had talked about to be put in the pool with the other suggestions. So that's where that is at this time. I would hope that we could take care of that at the next meeting. Though if the board feels otherwise, it could wait. It might be able to wait till August. What do you think about that, Peter? I don't know. It's been waiting a long time, but
I've planned to circulate these to everybody tomorrow as I've caught up on some stuff in the office, but I would like to put this on the next meeting, just to hopefully, if we can all take the next 2 weeks and look at them, visit the site, and to try to move this forward. I Yeah.
It's one that's been hanging out there a while and we kind of just have to deal with it. So, but that's where it is. It's not a public hearing at this point. It's kind of an informal thing. Trying to make some corrections in a process that went awry, let's say.
I have a specific request here that you do not send those to, because as an abutter, I recuse from the 12 pond.
Yep, no, I will not send those to you, but I will be posting them online if you as an abutter would visually see them.
And Peter, if you could just wait on that posting until Deepa and I are in agreement that yes, that
Okay.
you can post the other options, but until that remaining option, you know, that we can agree that, yep, that's what we asked for in the applicant.
Okay. You know what,
provided
I'll
it.
hold off onto it until
Okay.
Monday, and then I'll wait to hear back from you.
Yeah, should
Okay.
get that to you very shortly. Just haven't had a time to review it.
No
So
problem.
if anyone wants it, they can have it. I just don't want to have to take it back and say, no, that's not what we meant. You know, I want it to try to be clear in a process that has been anything but clear. So, all right. So that's just what it is. If no one has any questions about it, that's just where 12 Pond Street is. And I had next on the agenda, we had sustainability. Matt, is I'm saying Matt Marshquist on screen? Maybe not. Right, might be a different Matt. Matt Marsh, I had sustainability was going to come out at 8:30. That's why it seemed a little early. So that might still be true. I just thought if they were here, then I didn't want to make them wait. So between now and 8:30, I thought we could go through the other stuff that's usually at the end of our agenda. And then we can talk to sustainability, the sustainability committee, the representatives that are here. We had talked about going through the priority items for net zero. So while we have this time, we'll skip over number 7 and come back to it and go on to number 8, which is the reports from board members and town planner. And we have a number of items on that list, including comprehensive plan, if there are things we want to discuss there. So sustainability committee is A on that list, obviously. Well, we will wait for that. Item B is design review committee. I hadn't intended getting in a long discussion on that this evening, but we did discuss it obviously quite a bit at the retreat about kind of next steps and trying to iron out I think hopefully a consistent way of working with the design review committee as projects continue to come forward. So is there anything anyone wanted to talk about design review committee that I think was that we should discuss at this time at our meeting?
I mean, I recall if my recollection is accurate, I think I had asked them, I don't know if there was consensus on this from the board, that it would be helpful to get their thoughts more in writing as to what they had in mind. I don't know if we've received anything from them on that, or if we should maybe have Emma or Peter send them a follow-up to kind of see where that is.
You were talking about their thoughts in writing about their role and the timing of their role. Like
just to kind of better understand, because I feel like that topic keeps coming up, but I'm not feeling that I can adequately respond as a planning board member, because I feel like I need something more solid, me personally, to kind of understand step by step what they have in mind, kind of like the process that would work for them, so that we as a board can react and respond in writing. I think that would be really helpful here, so that we don't have these continued things come up.
I agree. Yeah, I agree with Anna in the sense that we've had like about 4 discussions now, and I think we're trying to get better. It seems to me that we end up always going in like circular conversations about it, and long-winded conversations that are not to the point. And I think to really make progress on that, I think putting things in writing as to the process is really the next step. And until we have that, really is going to be difficult to make progress, right? I think we started by saying that we were going to be more dutiful about setting up what the tasks that we wanted the design review committee to do are on every project. They've expressed the desire to expand the scope of what they do and how and the timing, also the timing of when they are involved. I think that we had some discussions about that during the retreat, but if we can set up a clear system, I mean, I don't know why it cannot be simple to say, okay, the expectation of the planning board is that there's this timing and we're going to set up these goals. The goals are going to go in writing on X time. We expect to have a review and a return in writing, like Anna said, of the process. And I think that the meetings will be faster and they will be more efficient at what they're doing, because some of the things that I've heard is that they're not, I guess they didn't have a consistent goal, and sometimes they went into areas that then got dismissed, and and we're all trying to make the process better, but I think that's the next step in my view.
But so do you agree that the next step is having the design review committee provide something in writing that then we can look at and fully understand what they're asking for? Is that right?
I like that. I think that's good, but I think we should do the same. I think we should, and we did discuss it a little bit, but I think the planning board needs to, and we started it a little bit, but we just haven't finalized it in the sense that to get a more organized system on how we task the design review, how we engage their expertise and the help that they can give the planning board.
Okay. Yeah, I think it's a good idea as well. I agree that it seems like we're going in circles with the conversation, and it would really help to everything in black and white that we can just get to be very direct about the conversation, about what the expectations are in both directions.
Yeah, and I think that will help us to make the meetings be about what the topic of design review is and not what the unachieved goals or expectations that have been not met, because that seems to be like 80% of the discussion.
Mm-hmm. We do. Peter did reach out to Kathy Rooney to ask if she would, if we could have a meeting with Kathy Rooney, myself, Peter, and Emma to try to just get on the same page a little bit, and help, that maybe would facilitate the process that you guys are talking about as well. So I don't think Peter has heard back from her yet. It hasn't been very long, a few days, right? So
that would be great next step.
So okay.
So I think to me it's sounding like this is the Senate and House of Representatives on the bill, and you come together. And I like both the ideas, what their expectation and probably the planning board, because I'm new and I don't quite understand those pitch points, but people that have been on a little bit longer do. So I think that has to be the planning board stab at what we would like to see that would help, I guess. Right.
Yeah, and it is, it is kind of creating something new, because 10 years ago, the design review committee might have operated very differently. But when Peter and I and Emma came on board, it really wasn't even, the design review committee was telling us, the members were telling us that basically they weren't even consulted. So there's a really fragmented relationship already when Peter and I and Emma joined. And then we've been trying to work toward repairing that. So it's a little bit starting from scratch, except for what is already in the bylaws. So it's kind of a process. So, but anyway, we'll continue on that just to give you a heads up of where things are. And maybe next time this is on the agenda, whether it's a retreat or a regular meeting, we'll have the system a little bit better in place for discussion. So.
Just as a kind of funny note on this topic, in looking at the whole comprehensive plan thing, went through website to see the list of boards and committees, because we were talking about making up that panel and who should have representatives. And there is on the town website listed a development liaison committee. The page is basically blank, but it says the purpose of the development liaison committee is to open communication between all boards that oversee development projects within town. The committee is not intended to supplant the responsibilities of any of the boards. So at some point, somebody may have done this in the past, but like I said, there's no members listed there. So I don't think it currently exists.
I don't remember that committee, but not, I don't know, sometime over the past 6 months, I'll say, I told Peter, like, we really need to go through that list of, it's not the planning board's responsibility, but the town as a whole needs to go through that list of committees, because there's so many of them. There's some of them that don't exist anymore, right? But they're just on the list as if they exist, but they haven't had a meeting in years and there's no members.
I made a little spreadsheet today of like who has members and who's elected, who's appointed, and which ones are made up of members of other boards and that kind of thing. It looks like
that might be a very valuable spreadsheet right now, so hold on to that.
Yeah, so the select board has something similar to that, where there's, I don't know how often they meet or if they really do meet, but there's 2 members of the select board, 2 members of I can't remember who it was, of financial committee, and 2 members of the school committee, maybe, or something like that. But anyways, they had like a similar type of thing where it was just to meet and talk about how they work with each other.
I love your proactive energy towards spreadsheeting, Kevin. That's great. And I don't know if this is something that fits within this discussion, but it's crossed my mind since the last town meeting. But since you're going to meet with Peter, Emma, and Kathy on that process, I was wondering if there was something similar, or if there needs to be something similar, or some type of engagement with the historical commission, because one of the things that they proposed something on the town meeting that did not pass. That it seems to me that is kind of another connection that the planning board might want to have, and really to understand more what part of the process needs to be, where you need to be involved. I don't know. It's just a thought.
I think all of these things, I totally understand what you're saying, Marcel, and I think all of these things, as Anna usually says, and she did not jump in here, but all of these things tie right back into the comprehensive plan, right?
Exactly.
So there's your lead in, Anna, to comprehensive plan. So what do we need to, in your view, Anna, what do we need to talk about comprehensive plan?
Yeah, so I think we were so close at the retreat where we took Michael's document and we made our way through it, and we made some changes. If you guys recall, I had highlighted some suggested language. We made our way through it. I think we're literally on the last page of that document. And at the time of the retreat, I had made changes as we talked, and I sent Peter and Emma right after the retreat the new version with our changes. I don't think that ever made its way to the board for today's meeting. I just resent it to Peter and Emma so they have it, but I have it open. We can share the screen, or Peter could, and we could just keep going and wrap it up, and then I guess do a final review of our changes. And
I'm just going to make you a co-host right now.
That's
if you like to share
fine.
the screen.
I will try. I think the last time we did this, I failed miserably to share my screen.
I'm happy to download it right now.
I think I just resent it to you.
Okay.
To you and Emma. We're really quite close. And then, yeah, and we can kind of, I don't know if it would make sense for the board to go back up in the document and review the changes we made first, just to kind of refresh our memory. Maybe I'll do that really quick for the board, and then we can just wrap this up. And the way I envision this is we would have Peter or Emma forward this on to Michael and the select board and ask for a meeting to discuss it.
Can everyone see?
Yep.
Anna? Okay.
Yep. So if you scroll down, is this the one I just sent you just now?
This is the one you just sent me.
Beautiful. So if you scroll down to where it says new version, I think it's the first time there's gonna be a bunch of yellow. Yep, perfect. So let's just start there just to kind of refresh our memory. Yep, don't go down. Yep.
Oh.
So if you guys remember, we talked about the management team. We had a long discussion at the retreat about who would be on that. I think we landed on 2 planning board members, 2 select board members, town planner who reports to town manager, and the assistant town planner. So that's kind of where we landed on that. I think if you guys recall, my original version had more of a planning board lean, and we came up with something that we had consensus on that involves more select board members. And then if you scroll down, Peter, please. And then we had the discussion about the steering committee and the importance of it being Ashland residents, but we also talked about how we would want town staff and the consultant to be on the committee, but not as voting members. And that was like the big discussion back and forth. I think that's where we landed. And we specified that the steering committee would be 2 planning board, 2 select board, public members, as noted by Michael. And if you keep going down, or the various groups that Michael had noted, and if you scroll down further, sorry, Peter, would you mind scrolling a little bit more?
I got it.
Thank you so much. And then we talked about the chair and the vice chair. The leadership would have to be residents, and any staff are non-voting and would not be able to be in those positions. And then we were literally in the very last section, which is the process phase. And if Peter scrolls to that, the only changes that we have not yet discussed are literally like way on the bottom of the document. You scroll down a little bit more, right there. That's literally all we have left. So again, these are my edits. The yellow stuff is I had added it, and we have not yet discussed it.
So are we reviewing this from the top, the highlights, or are we?
So all the highlights on top, we had already discussed at the retreat. So everything higher than this is my edits based on consensus at the retreat. But this is where we stopped.
Yeah, I agree that
Yep.
the decisions are there. There was just some things about language I think I would change, but maybe they're not critical on this draft.
But yeah, no, we can definitely go back up and clean it up a little bit more. But this is the section that we did not yet discuss at the retreat.
Okay,
Like,
well, we can
this is
start
the
that
only.
first and then.
Yep. So what you guys are looking at is Anna's edits, right? So like the yellow bold is the stuff that I had edited to Michael's version. Nobody has to agree with me. I think we just need to kind of talk through it. And I think the big ticket item here is is the final vote of the draft a planning board vote or a planning board and select board vote? That's the question I think for us to talk about. Because the way mine is drafted here in the yellow is the final vote on the final draft is the planning board, not the select board and planning board.
But I think that's what we agreed last time around, isn't it? I believe that's consistent with our discussion.
I want to make sure I'm just making sure that we all have had that discussion, because this particular section we had not touched at the retreat. Maybe we talked about it, we just didn't like make it official.
Yeah, I think we had said that the planning board would have a final approval of the consultant, so we didn't talk about final approval of the written plan.
Yeah, I don't think we got to this section yet.
And here, I mean, I can see the select board maybe having some heartache over this, where it's a more inclusive plan that's including, you know, things that are in their wheelhouse too, strategic stuff too, not just our obligations of a comprehensive plan. But I could go either way on that. But it would be nice for us to come to a consensus and approve the thing together.
Well, after after it's approved by the planning board, then it goes to town meeting, right? It's not just that the planning board,
Right.
So in a sense, the consensus, whether whoever has the final approval, which is fine, this way, whoever has the final approval really has to have the final approval of the select board as well, or you'll get some very unpleasant comments perhaps during the town meeting, which may not be, may not be productive for our process or to reach that last leg and not get it over the finish line, So it's definitely, I think it's definitely something that will have to be a consensus in the end. But given that, it lays in our responsibility for under Mass General Law, then maybe this is kind of the official, way to do it.
I think Tricia, to your point, the prior, if you read that initial first sentence of the second paragraph, right? The draft is assembled, presented to both the planning board and select board for comment and feedback. And then there's the final vote by the planning board. So the concept is we would want the select board's input. We would want their feedback. We would want to hear their thoughts before we vote as a planning board so that we have that level of certainty that this is something that works for the town, right? So even though the select board is not voting per se, the way this is framed is they're an integral part of our thinking, our discussions, our consensus building, and then our vote.
Yeah, I mean, and that's the reason I'm okay with it, because if we go ahead with a final approval of something where we know that the select board is not happy with it, we're doing so at our risk. It is very much in our for benefit for not only for the planning board, for the town as a whole, to have consensus with the select board, for the success of the project at town meeting. So I think that's critical, in any case.
So what does that mean, Tricia? That means that you suggest that the final draft be approved by both boards?
I'm okay. I'm okay with it this way. I would be okay with it either way, that it gets approved by the select board, and then that it could have an informal approval by the select board and then a final approval by the planning board or something like that, to make sure we have built that consensus, to feel very confident about it. But I think no matter how you put it in here, that's the reality, that we need that consensus, or there may be people on the planning board who are unhappy because there's no consensus, and you'll take it to town meeting and there'll obviously be not consensus and it won't go through anyway. So no matter how we put it in the process, that consensus is vital, I think, critical to success. So
it sounds like, Tricia, you're okay with it drafted this way, as long as we aim to have that meeting with the planning board, with the select board. And we kind of understand that collaboration here is key. Deepa and Kate, are you guys okay with these?
I am okay. I have some concerns about details, but I'm not so much comments on Michael's maybe, but the whole thing. But I'm not sure that matters at this stage. But I did want to check in with the board. Is this our last chance? Because if you ask me to sign my name to this right now as the whole plan, I don't know if I would. The edits, absolutely, I'm on board with. So what are your thoughts on that?
I mean, I look at this as a conversation with the select board, right? We drafted our very detailed document. Michael came back with this, and this is what the select board wanted us to think about. I think the best way to collaborate is to sort of start with this response and see where we are with the select board. I'm not sure this is our final, right? It's a conversation. And then the select board would presumably take a look at these edits and have some feedback for us. And the planning board would need further discussion and a vote at some point, right? So I think we do have to vote on some kind of process that we're comfortable with. But I don't think we're there yet. I mean, I think we really need the select board's response to these changes and Michael's response before we can say, ooh, this is it, right? Like,
Yeah, no, I agree. I agree that it's
Yeah.
a conversation still right now, that this is not a formal, necessarily these are the rules document, but gives us something to move forward on. Because on the other, like I said, the other highlights, I have questions with those too. That it's not a decision that we're approving. It's the next part of the conversation, I guess.
I think that's where we are. And part of it for me is I think we want to get it right. Like, I don't want to be pushing for a comprehensive plan that's expensive and quite tedious for many, many stakeholders in town, right? We want to make this a successful project. So I don't particularly feel like we should be rushing to kind of stamp our approval yet. I think this is an ongoing discussion with the select board. I do recall that this was on the select board's agenda yesterday. Peter, I don't know if you have an update for us as to what they're doing.
I actually listened to that. They just had a quick talk about it and said that they would need another joint meeting with us, but they scheduled a meeting of their own on April 3rd, I think, the first Wednesday of August, where they're going to, in like a retreat fashion, talk about this again. So I think it would be good if we could get them whatever changes we have or notes we have prior to then. So we'd have this meeting and more meeting of ours between now and then. And then they talked about scheduling another joint meeting sometime after that with us to hopefully get to a final version.
So it sounds like they may not have space for a joint meeting before their August retreat. I mean, if we're okay with these changes, like my suggestion would be we go back up in the document, make it pretty, because I think Tricia, I know that there was some spelling stuff and we can make this a little bit cleaner. So do we want to give that a shot now, Tricia, and get this over to the select board and see what happens?
Yeah, I think as long as it's framed as a working document and not, like Kate said, it's not that it's a working document.
Yeah, actually, you can put a draft stamp on the header.
Yes. Yeah, exactly.
Peter, do you want to just do that? Or I want to say, if you scroll back up, there was like one kind of embarrassing spelling error that just looked obviously like a spelling error. Hold on, go back down. Sorry, it's right. Where was it? It was like, oh, nope, a little higher. I'm sorry. It's where we discuss who should be in the leadership role. I think it just is like, okay, it probably would look better. See, it says it's okay. Maybe say it is appropriate for town staff and consultant to be in the committee. Yeah,
that was definitely one of my changes.
Yeah, it's just a little.
It's too informal.
Yeah, it is appropriate. It is appropriate. Maybe add an is. Yeah, just to kind of clean it up a tiny bit.
Yeah, just one note I do want to add, not to jump in and chime in too much, but down here at the bottom, when you say it's an input to final to both the final approval, usually the vote's for an endorsement. So it's just not like a typically approval of it. It's a endorsement of the plan. So I just.
You mean for things to go then to town meeting?
Yeah. So the planning board, the vote from a legislative statute is a vote of endorsement, right? So you're saying it's a vote of acceptance, it's a vote of endorsement, it's a vote of confidence, right? So it's not a vote of approval, such as I think it just comes down to terminology.
Maybe
I think it's okay to say approval. But
you want to call it endorsement, just to kind of keep it clean, final endorsement?
Yeah, I'd say final endorsement.
Would
And then
the
maybe
last word be approval by town meeting, or is that also endorsement by town meeting?
Typically, there's no vote at town meeting. There's only a presentation at town meeting.
Okay.
Yep. So typically after the project wraps up, as that closure to the process, right? There's usually in my eyes and in my experience, there is a full there's a meeting, like a joint meeting scheduled, obviously, and there's a full presentation of the master plan. And then at that point, then the planning board and then the select board would take a vote or final endorsement of the plan. And then that kind of seals the package, kind of seals everything together.
Let's go back up to the other edits if there's nothing else here, just because I want to keep somewhat on time for the
Trish, just tell me where to stop.
the team, I think that the one above here, yeah. Oh, yeah, so start there, stop. So wait a minute, stop. So I believe this says up there that, just to confirm that the select board and the planning board, the project management team is going to choose 3 contenders for the consultants, right? And then the final decision will be made by the planning board. Is that what that says up there? I think that's what we.
Can we go back up? I think that was the idea. Yeah,
right there.
Exactly.
For discussion, the planning board would make a decision after okay. And then on the new version, I think this is what we said, but I just think we should take out who reports to the town manager. I don't think it's needed, appropriate, say, in the new version text.
So second line of under a new version, Peter.
Oh, okay.
In yellow. Yep. So we
Yeah,
just say the town manager.
1 minute. I had to let Matt Marquestin.
Oh, sorry. So see how it says town planner who report? Yeah, exactly. Just remove that little part.
And then in choosing, again, this is just a draft, but in choosing, if we keep going down, and this kind of goes back to Kevin's analysis that he did, that, we haven't really looked at these list of committees and their various functions. So I guess it was a little bit further down, but this list. So to me, this is a suggested list, and that we should look at it more carefully before making. It's a good list, but I can't say if somebody has been excluded or if there's something on this that really, really doesn't need to be there. Say I think all these companies are very active, actually, but
no, that's a really good idea. And I recall one of our retreats like 6 months ago, we had a whole list, or at least I remember discussing like internal stakeholders in our community versus external, like, I don't know, the business folks in town, et cetera. So maybe we should, like, it's going to take some time for us to schedule a mutual retreat or a meeting again with the select board. Maybe we just add in yellow that the planning board will come to the select board meeting with some suggestions for this list or something like that. And that gives us some time, maybe at the next planning board meeting, we can bring in our suggestions and give them to Peter and put them together, kind of thing.
Yeah, I mean, it could be the proposed steering committee, may include members of the following, to be final decisions to be made later, and also on this committee, there'll probably be, it does say 4 at-large citizens, which is then excluded from this list. So it should be some citizens at large who are part of no committee, perhaps. So I think to me, that's a suggested committee, but the final one, I think, will take more thought, I guess.
So I agree with that. That was one of the things I was saying I wouldn't sign my name to yet, but I think to keep this going as a draft in that conversation with select board, we can say, to be reviewed or in review by planning board, but it doesn't stop the process of trying to communicate with them.
Yeah, and I'm not opposed to obviously the select board having a voice in those members as well. I think the question is, again, it's effort from the planning board and money from the select board, and there's a balance and a collaboration that needs to happen there throughout the process. So I'll be continually kind of looking for ways that we're collaborating versus making things exclusive, not forming an exclusive club on the planning board, or sorry, on the comprehensive plan.
I mean, I can think of other organizations that are not listed here that we may want to think about. So, again, I think that maybe the way to do it is for all of us to do a little homework, create a list of things we would add, get it over to Peter, and then we can create a combined list and bring it to the discussion with the select board and just sort of brainstorm together with them. You know what I'm saying? That's kind of what I'm envisioning. Unless you guys want to try to do it on the spot right now. Maybe we just add a sentence that says the planning board is reviewing this list and will bring its suggestions to our mutual meeting.
So
Yeah,
there
I'm
may
not
be
even sure. Oh, go ahead.
There may be other boards, committees, and groups in town that aren't listed on the town's website, but I send this spreadsheet I made of what is listed on the website at least. I think it would be okay if I sent it through Peter for everybody to see this, and then maybe we could just run through the list, quickly at our next meeting after everyone's had a chance. I mean, I don't see too many that I see a few that I wonder if somebody should be added, but I also don't know if maybe I didn't go in enough detail that maybe most of their members are also on another committee or something like that.
Yeah,
I think it's something that we could, add a couple suggestions to this list.
And I can do something similar. And I think I had a list from November of like external groups, like the Chamber of Commerce, the Moms of Ashland group, things like that we may want to think about. So I can send that to Peter as well. And, I think that, Tricia, unless you want to try to do it on the spot today, it sounds like maybe I think we're ready to get this draft to the select board. And I think we just need a sentence that says that the planning board will bring its suggestions for additional groups to the mutual meeting for a discussion with the select board, something like that. Get this draft over to the select board, and then at the next planning board meeting, we get prepared, right? And we kind of come up with a list.
Yeah, I mean, I think it could be as simple as just putting at the top of that list, draft or suggested list of steering committee members. It just makes it non-definitive. You might not get a single library trustee that wants to serve on this 2-year committee, right?
Yeah, I think that's good.
So it really is just suggested. It's hoped for, or people that so.
So I'm going to save this. I'm going to circulate this to everybody. And obviously I'm going to format it a little bit. Is that what everyone is it with the understanding of?
Well, I don't think we need this to go to us anymore. I think this is ready to be sent to the select board. Okay. I would make that yellow as well. The thing that you added, you added right under the list of groups, you added a sentence. The planning board will complete the list. Yeah, because I would make that yellow as well for the select board's purposes. So the idea is like, if you get this over to Michael and the select board, they can see all the changes we made to Michael's version. But my suggestion would be we put draft on top and we get this out to the select board and Michael as soon as possible and ask for a joint meeting as soon as possible. That would be my suggestion.
I don't want to hang up sustainability, but could I hit a couple other little notes I had on the rest of this document?
Yeah.
On the third page, roughly, they're just on the overall name of what this plan is. I know it was Wellesley was a unified plan or whatever, but Michael has it in here as Ashland's master plan. And I think I'm trying not to use the word master anymore. It's not a master bedroom anymore and that kind of thing. So maybe if we just come up with another suggested name, I don't know if we just put comprehensive in the thesaurus and see what comes up, but
frankly, we just call it a comprehensive plan. I don't know why a comprehensive plan can't be more comprehensive than what was written in 1950.
But
you know,
Peter, could you make that yellow again so that Michael can see the change easily, if you don't mind? Thanks. I just want to be consistent with the document.
Yeah, so I think in other references to any other name, but the final document, I mean, this is just my opinion. We have other people here that can express an opinion, but just keep it simple and call it a comprehensive plan.
Yeah, I would agree with that. We could do a control search function and replace them.
And then Michael made a list of, based off the planning board's responsibility, the plan needs to include certain things, and then other things that we would add to this to make it the more comprehensive plan. The only thing on that list, I was just trying to brainstorm if there's anything else that we would want to add beyond our legal responsibilities. They have services and facilities on there. I'm thinking that would include like water and sewer and utilities and that kind of thing. But that seems like something that we should be planning for in the future. So as long as everybody's in agreement that services and facilities would include those types of things, I'm good with that list.
Yeah, I don't know officially what it's meant to include. Do you, Anna? Services and facilities usually says that.
Yeah, I can peek at the statute really quick. Hold on, I'll tell you. Give me 1 second. Let me roll over to where I have it. 1 second.
It's a common chapter that a lot of towns will use putting in facilities, obviously buildings, services, trash collection, water, sewer, municipal kind of.
So DPW stuff would be.
Yeah, that's the way I've always kind of taken it to point.
So,
traditionally, it's not been part of the or historical master plan.
services and facilities element is defined as identifies and analyzes existing and forecasting needs for facilities and services used by the public.
That's very descriptive.
Yeah, very descriptive indeed. I'm sure there's a deeper, this is like the primary section of the comprehensive plan statute. There might be a more definition section, Kevin. I just don't have that printed.
Okay, anyways, I think my concerns too also fall under energy sustainability and resilience. Just, like there's droughts in the world and we should talk about where our water comes from in the master plan. I had another note on just the grouping of the steering committee. If this would be still a topic for our joint discussion, but how many at-large citizens is the right number? In the consultant selection phase, which is the next to last page, Michael wrote that one idea we may want to consider is an independent consultant dedicated solely to the community engagement aspect. So I'm curious if that's another thing that we would need to be ready for by town meeting, if this is a second consultant. I guess this would get us ready, but we don't talk anywhere in this thing about how we're selecting that consultant. I assume it would follow the same guidelines, but again, something we don't need to highlight here or figure out here, but just we should talk about that in our joint meeting to make sure we know how it's going to work.
Peter, correct me if I'm wrong, but isn't that part of the process that is set out by the first consultant?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
So it seems redundant then.
Yeah, it's a little redundant in my eyes. I agree with you, Marcelo.
I mean, that the first consultant should organize.
Yeah, that's what we're paying him for, right?
Right.
Yeah.
The whole thing versus having a separate second consultant.
Yeah, and a separate person that then has to be managed by another committee. And I think that the key of trusting a professional consultancy group is precisely to avoid that and focus on what's good for the town.
Yeah, I agree. It's much cleaner if one person's doing.
I mean, one thing that I was going to say is like, it really depends on who you hire, right? If you hire a consultant that's an expert in gathering data and helping draft a plan, and some consultants have expertise more in the public gathering piece of it and working with the public. I think that one consultant is sufficient as long as they have both of those expertise. Like my preference would be to hire somebody who really knows how to work with the public comfortably and maybe has that reputation. And then we can just have one. But if we're struggling with that, if maybe the labor market and demand is such that we can't find the right person, I'm not closed to the idea of two, if that is Michael's recommendation. So I feel like this is a little bit more open-ended for me. I'd like to see who's out there and what we get back so that we can make sure that we do the right combination of things.
But isn't that why we already talked about the process of selecting the right consultant, and we will get to vote on precisely to select the right one? I mean, I would be surprised that there will be a consultant that does this type of work that doesn't have skill of expertise.
Yeah, no, I totally agree. I think one is enough. For some reason, I thought Michael's thought was to potentially have two. Am I wrong?
But and I don't know if this is the case. I may be completely wrong about this, but remember that Michael's document is coming from the point of what they explained to us, that they were almost micromanaging in-house the whole process. And the objective here is to really liberate the process part and have the consultant do that.
Yeah,
and it's going to guide them writing the RFP. I just think it needs to be clear that, you know, the request is that you can provide everything, even if the consultant needs to hire a consultant for this second part of it, you know, come to us with a package that includes part of it. Not the town might also hire out a second consultant.
No, I kind of see where you're going with it. And maybe we need to add a sentence that's really clear that like planning board's preference is one consultant that has extensive expertise in all of those elements. Where would that go, Kevin? Where did you?
So this was on the next to last page under consultant selection phase. The third paragraph under consultant selection phase. So it's up a little bit from here. Yeah, right. The third paragraph there. One idea we may want to consider is an independent consultant. So maybe just a note, the planning board would prefer all this to fall under the responsibility of one consultant. All right. Well, like,
you can say under the scope of work of just one consultant, right?
Yeah, there you
go. Just as a note, I believe I believe Michael Herbert has jumped on the call. If we have any questions for him, I know we are trying to actually wrap this up. We're trying to wrap this up because we have sustainability committee, which we have, you know, I told them to come on at this time, so I want to make sure I honor that. But if anyone has a question for Michael that would clarify things, we might be able to ask him that. I don't actually.
Michael, that's pretty much the end of my notes. The only other thing was in the drafting and approval process, it sort of reads like we, the planning board, are writing the whole thing. So maybe we note that the consultant is doing a lot of the drafting with our guidance. Unless you guys are really good writers.
I mean, I think that that's going to be difficult for us to predict because we don't know the makeup of the planning board. We don't know the makeup of the, you know, the different committees yet, and nor do we know the expertise and comfort of the consultant. I think it's going to be really important to put the right folks into the that key committee, the project management committee, if you will. And I think all of us here on the planning board are going to have to take responsibility, but the reality is I think we can be as involved as we choose to be, right? Like as a planning board member, you can be as active as you want to be. So if we want to be involved in giving feedback, written or otherwise, to the various groups and the consultant, I think we'll have that ability as members and as a planning board. I don't know if we want to choreograph every little element of it because so much of this is going to depend on the select board's response to our edits. I feel like I'm not quite ready yet for that. I think, Kevin, your points are excellent and I want to have those points discussed. Like Kate had said, she's not quite ready, nor am I, to sort of say, this is it. I want to hear the select board's response to this before we really dig deeper and really get comfortable with every little step of it. You know what I mean?
Yeah, so are we comfortable just calling it a draft, which it is? It's a point of discussion and just getting something back to them, as Anna said, so that they can look at it and lob the ball back to us. I would in no way consider it a final document, but it's getting more ideas out there.
I think so, yeah.
I think somebody should just read the whole thing holistically. Like I see integrated plan proposal, comprehensive plan, master plan, a lot of different things in the same package. So I think we need to just look at that document one more time to clean that up.
Well, would the board, either we can send it out to the whole board to have edits, or Anna and I can send it back and forth a little bit and then send it out to the board, or just send it to to the select board. What are people's thoughts on that, just to expedite the process?
I mean, I would suggest we call a draft and we add a comment in there that we would like the select board to comment on this idea that we consistently call this a comprehensive plan. And then let's get their feedback. They might have strong feelings about it. And then we can edit it afterwards. I'm sort of aiming toward, let's just get this to them for their input because they may have their own suggestions.
But I don't know that that's mutually exclusive. I actually like, if you're amenable to work with Tricia on that. I mean, if we put it as a comprehensive plan and it just cleans up the document, that's
fine.
Just highlight it in yellow, you know?
Yeah. So Tricia, I can help you do that. I think the two of us can do it.
Okay.
It's like a search function, right?
Yeah, Peter, why don't you send a draft of this, this copy of your copy, which is the most up to date. Send it to Anna and I. We're going to take a pass at staying within the things that the planning board has discussed tonight, and just clean it up so that it can be sent to the select board. I mean, I should be able to carve out, time. I can carve out time tomorrow if I need to.
Yeah, I just saved this to my desktop. I'm going to move it to the correct folder. And as we're talking about sustainability, I can try to do at least take out master plan and put comprehensive plan, and I'll send it to the both of you.
Do we need a motion to vote on that, or just keep going? I can make a motion that we have the chair and co-chair final draft to send to the select board as soon as possible of the comments to proposed Michael Herbert plan.
All right, and a second?
I'll second that.
And a roll call vote.
Aye.
Anna Tesmanitsky, aye.
Aye.
Kathleen Kersey, aye.
And Tricia Kendall, aye. So, and Kevin would vote aye, which I think he should because it's important.
Aye.
And we'll take care of that and get it on its way. So we keep this ball rolling. So, all right. Thanks, everybody. So the next thing on the agenda, and I thank you, Sustainability Committee, trying to get us there as quickly as I could without compromising other business, But I think everyone has received the sheet entitled Net Zero Sustainability and Planning Action Items that we passed on to the board members. And Matt, who is with you tonight from the Sustainability Committee?
With me is Margie Gazelle. So just Margie. We were going to have Kara, but she is out sick tonight.
Okay.
So can't make it.
So, well, thank you both for being here. I think the thing is, first for Matt, or for either one of you, whichever is most appropriate, to kind of introduce us to this sheet and about what this is describing for you, and then how what kind of feedback are you looking from us at this time?
Sure, I can do that. So as you know, we've been reviewing a bunch of action items relating to planning and sustainability with Anna and Marcelo. And we started out with this kind of long list, and we've whittled it down. And just to back up a bit, these are all items that relate to the net zero resolution that we passed the fall 2019 town meeting, which set a goal of reaching net zero for town emissions by 2040. That's an aggressive goal that had some conversations with different people around that goal, and I think the best way of saying why we set that goal rather than maybe the easier 2050 goal was that we view Massachusetts as being one of the leaders in the country as far as renewable energy and sustainability, and we, knowing that there are many states that are behind us, and that in fact there are many countries that are well behind us, looking at the IPCC, they have stated that we should be net zero globally by 2050. So we feel like we need to be kind of out ahead of that as leaders and help the rest of the world, because we are kind of in a privileged position in some ways. So that's the goal that we've set, and we have spent the last couple of years as a committee reviewing the strategy to get there, and we created a net zero framework, which includes a number of actions. The ones that we reviewed with the planning board members are those specific to planning. So there are other items such as incentives for upgrades, an energy aggregation plan for the town, things like that that are kind of out of the scope of planning, which we are also working on. But this list is strictly things that we think we need to collaborate directly with planning on. So to return to the list, the things that we looked at are that we looked at three main sources for this. The Net Zero Playbook, which was created by MAPC, and they pulled together a bunch of best practices in a few documents around transportation, buildings, energy, and zoning and permitting. And so we pulled everything that seemed related to planning out of those, added it to our list. We also looked at the Acton Net Zero Blueprint, which had a lot of good suggestions, some suggestions which were more on the experimental side and some which were pretty relevant to what we're doing. And then we also looked at the list of ideas that had been generated within town, our Ashland Net Zero list. And so we kind of had a very long list, and we went through that together, and we whittled it down. So for each of the items that we looked at, and the document I shared, it's a one-pager, but then it links to a more in-depth document. For each of those action items, we have a page that shows a summary, like description of what the action item is, what some examples are, key contacts in town, and then we kind of made a note of the feedback and discussion that we had around those action items. So at first it was about 40 things, 40 action items. It was a little bit unwieldy, and we kind of tried to group things thematically and group things in terms of the time frame that we feel like makes sense to implement them. So hopefully what you're seeing with this one pager is a little bit more easily digestible and makes a little more sense, even though there is still that larger list as a reference point. So I think it's just important to understand that larger list exists in terms of the process that we went through. We kind of had a pretty involved process. I want to thank Marcelo and especially Anna, who attended almost all the meetings going through those items. And I also just wanted to point out, I don't think you need to be familiar with all of those items at this time. It's meant to serve as a reference as we go forward, so that, let's say we decide to work on a few of those things this year. In a couple of years, we may be tackling electric vehicle infrastructure. So we can refer to that list and go back to that list and look at those things. And they're meant to be sort of a starting point. They aren't necessarily the end recommendation, but it's kind of like a good starting point for further research and further policy making. So with that, I think I've kind of set up the two documents, but we could go through that one pager, and then I think what we're looking for is feedback. Does this prioritization, does this kind of plan in terms of the next few years make sense? Are there things that jump out to you as red flags? Are there things that are exciting to you because they're already kind of things that you're thinking about and working on? Any of that kind of feedback. And anyone else from the group, feel free to fill in what I may have missed here or other thoughts.
Matt, just one question. You referred to two documents. I have this one page action items. Was the other document the spreadsheet? Is that what you were?
Yeah.
I couldn't reach it. Just so you know, maybe you could send the actual, I don't know, link, or I just couldn't click on it and get the spreadsheet. It could be just me and my machine.
I probably need to share it out with, I don't know if I might need the list of emails to share it with, but I can just download it as a static copy.
Okay, whatever is best, and it doesn't have to be tonight. It's probably a lot more information than we can maybe deal with, but I just couldn't get to it.
Do you want, I could share a screen too, if that helps.
So is it, and this is a question for the board as well, is it best, do you think, to, as I'm sure this won't be our only conversation, to focus on the first part of the sheet first and kind of work our way down? What's the best way, do you think, to approach it? Should we look at the 2022, the kind of the low-hanging fruit, see if those are indeed low-hanging fruit from the planning board's perspective, and then kind of work our way deeper into the years, again, knowing that this won't be our only discussion? I'm a little worried about like just picking things here and there, because I'm not sure we'll get a complete kind of review or discussion.
I mean, my thought would be to have Matt or Margie explain high level why certain things were chosen in a certain order, and then maybe that would be a good way to frame it, so that we understand the thinking of complexity, if you will, or why certain things should be first. And then maybe open it up for discussion.
It seems to me, I mean, we can definitely do that. It seems to me that most, if not all of the things, most of the things through 2022 are already in place, or have the beginnings of those notions in place, let's say, that are already in place or starting. For instance, Ashlandale already follows the stretch code. Maybe we don't have it out there to advocate for it, you know, to be used more extensively, but it's already there for new construction and additions or whatever.
I can speak to that. Yeah, or go ahead.
I was just gonna say that the only one that jumps at me that I don't know the depth of what it, or the reach of it, is research and draft an initial nature-based bylaw, such as a green code. I don't know what, I mean, that's scheduled for 2022. Mm-hmm. That's all of the other, I agree with you that a lot of the other objectives are, you know, fairly attainable and they are kind of in progress already, but that one seems like it could be a special one, and if Matt could explain, that would be helpful for me. I don't know.
Sure. And just to like speak to the stretch code, there is a new stretch code that's being developed by the state, which will be nearly net zero. I don't know if it's technically net zero, but it gets a lot closer to that. And it's an opt-in stretch code, so we would need to pass it at a town meeting. So I think the idea there is to kind of begin advocacy around that, with the idea of passing it at town meeting when it becomes available in 2023. The nature-based solutions piece, so it's basically beginning to research and draft a bylaw, which we've referred to it mostly as a tree bylaw. And so there are a couple of ways that we're talking about that. One is maybe just a standalone tree bylaw. The other is looking at the whole code and trying to do something that's looks at a lot of different nature-based solutions for stormwater, for landscaping, and trying to incentivize those. So there's two different kind of paths we could go down, but we feel that one may, because we've already done some preliminary work on it, that's a little bit further along than some of these other ones. We had a lot of conversations around the tree bylaw, and we have a lot of good kind of models that we could look at there. It's not an easy one. It's definitely complex. There are things to consider there, but it is further along. Plus, there is some urgency around that one. I feel there's a sense with the committee that's one that we would want to act on sooner.
So is part of that the tree bylaw that I don't think it never went to town meeting, right? But you had come before planning board at one point and presented it. So that might be a part of what fits under this bullet point. That would be
right.
Okay. And on the thing that's the first thing on the list, the support pedestrian transit infrastructure, is that not in? Why is that not in a group? I guess, why is that on its own? Is it?
That one, that's kind of like 2023. It's kind of ongoing. So these are things that are already being done to a certain degree, but require a lot more work ongoing too, because they're not complete. They're sort of bigger projects.
Okay, just things that no matter what you do aren't going to be done or passed or whatever in 1 year.
Yeah.
There are
Trails trail and things like that.
Okay.
We've started 1.5 mile section of it, but it'll be probably at least a decade before the trail is complete through town.
Well, I just kind of wanted to mention, and and maybe let's stay for now, at least for this part of the discussion, stay up in 2022. And until we kind of wear that out or really feel we have to go below. But I wanted to look at developing a checklist for new projects and best practices that do not require a town meeting vote. So those would be things that the projects that we deal with that are in front of planning board, but that are not a town meeting vote. Is that what you had in mind? Is that what you're thinking?
Yeah, it's some of the things that you're already doing, and just trying to kind of formalize that with the eye of potentially using it to incorporate into bylaws later. So if we feel there are certain questions that we should be asking developers right now, we're doing it informally, saying like, are you considering EV parking, things like that, seeing how willing they are to do that. And maybe that's something we want to codify, but for now, just having it be kind of a checklist.
Yeah, and I think I'm bringing that up because I don't remember when, I want to say in the last several months, Matt, you provided a letter that was kind of a checklist of these items, which was forwarded to, I can't remember what project, but I believe it ended up finding its way because the architect is the same for the two large projects going on. It ended up finding its way, I believe, to both projects. At least one seemed to suddenly have all of these ideas about sustainability in it, and we didn't have to bring it up again, I guess.
Okay.
So yeah, so it's good. So I think that not only has that process already started, but I think from my perspective, at least, and having Anna on the sustainability committee, that would be that having that checklist could be really valuable to us sooner rather than later. even if it's not obviously a mandatory checklist because it's not codified. But even the design review committee and our discussions with them, we're looking for such a list, you know, of things that they could push as well. So I think that's one thing that, you know, in 2022, that if that we could get that checklist, it sounds like it's partly there already, but we could start, and I think the board, because we have talked about these things before, I think we all feel similarly, at least about it, that's something we could start advocating for right away. But we did want to do it in conjunction. We wanted the sustainability committee to be the ones that produced the list, at least the first draft of the list, being a town committee and being your area of expertise. So
that's great. Yeah, we'd love to work on that with you, and definitely would be open to feedback, knowing that you have a lot of expertise within the planning board, you know, but we can give you the first draft at least.
So if we get that list, which I think is a good idea, because it would also, I guess, orient commonly when developers put something that really doesn't belong in sustainability. And that's, I guess, maybe a pet peeve, but it's a little annoying and patronizing. But I think if we get that list, what are the thoughts about adding that to our application? Because now we're really making a strong statement that this is what we're looking for.
you mean the project application when someone's applying for to the planning board? I'm not sure what that process is. I'll have to look at that, but yeah, to at least know that Ashland feels strongly about this. I'm not sure legally what we can. I don't know what that process is.
I mean, but, we could have the checklist could say, it could be informational. You know, this is welcome to the town of Ashland. Thank you for your application. We are a town that passed net zero on such and such day at town meeting. The planning department and the planning board honors that commitment by the town of Ashland. We ask you to review this checklist and do your best to address these items. It will help you be prepared for questions from the planning board, something like that. So it's informational rather than like beating them over the head. You must do all these things. It's more like we as a town are committed to these things.
Yeah, I agree. I agree with that. I think it should be just strongly suggested. But
yeah, and my only point of saying the application was you're making that statement. Until some of these, unless we make bylaws, cannot be. But if we don't put our values out there, we are never going to get it. So we have to not just make the checklist. That's my ask. Can we make the checklist as soon as possible and push it along as part of the application?
I guess also enforcing it for those larger projects, right? This is really has a stronger impact on larger projects, and we can go round and round on the same heat island effects and those parking spots and things like that. So I think the checklist should also have the different categories of project scale and type to make sure that the smaller projects don't get affected, but they also contribute in some way. But again, maybe enforcing certain conditions for the larger projects going forward, because that's where it's going to have a stronger impact.
I'm interested too, and I'm not sure. I'm not sure how, you know, what this, if the sustainability committee has been talking about this, but throughout a number of projects, there have been, debates about, and I don't know the answers to them always. I know a lot of times what LEED says, but that's not necessarily what Net Zero says for issues like, say, parking. You know, that what does sustainability say about parking? Yes, there might be trees in the lot, but how, you know, the sustainability typically says, hey, take public transportation, don't own a car. So don't provide as many parking spaces, or provide smaller parking spaces because we want people to drive smaller electric cars, right? So I'm interested, there are things that may be points of contention that isn't just like, sustainability committee provide us with a list and that's what we're going to give to developers. But I'm interested in knowing what the conflicts are so that we can start to really get and debate those things, because some of the choices are not easy. And And so I'm interested in those things too. I'm not that, at least personally, not just things that are like that are easy checklist items, but ones that make you think and have to make hard choices sometimes. So it has to be part of the discussion, I think.
And one thing on that, Tricia, because I agree with you on that, but I was thinking on maybe 2022, but the things that really, in my view, want to be codified sooner rather than later. I mean, we see a lot of these points, just touch on the minutia of the projects, like Deepa was saying, the larger projects. Katie mentioned about parking before, and you did now. I think I mentioned to Peter as well that our parking requirements are outdated. We're paving a lot more than we need to pave. I mean, that's something that should be addressed in the bylaws, probably in short notice, because we in every application we keep coming back to that point, right? And the third party review always makes this comment. So that would be kind of a low hanging fruit that we can kind of address based on what we just discussed. But the other one that's more big picture that I am concerned about for the short term, midterm, it's something that we've experienced recently and kind of left about flavor, at least on my side, is that we don't have in the bylaws codified how we are going to address the river and the river adjacencies and the river development around the river to make sure that we preserve and enhance that feature of the town. I mean, I don't see any few things that are more impactful and more, on the realm of sustainability that really maintaining and protect that asset from everything that can be developed around it kind of haphazardly, because we don't have any bylaw that protects that. That's something that if we experienced it in projects recently, where basically we don't have a standing on asking for anything because there's no specific bylaw addressing that. So if that's a point that I would love to see progress in the bylaws, and I think that's more important than a lot of the small ones. Not that the other ones are not important, but that one is a big one that is really for future generations.
Do you see that coming into your realm, Matt and Margie? Do you see that as fitting into your, the mission of the Sustainability Committee or your actions about protection of those kind of resources? Not necessarily in the way of clean water, but as a community?
Yeah, I believe so. I mean, I think that when I think of that river, I think mostly it's there's a lot of aesthetic potential there. That's kind of, it should be almost declared like a heritage area or something, special within the town if we have plans to do certain types of development there. But I think anytime you get into water sources, there are a lot of different sustainability considerations. I don't know if it's more of a Concom jurisdiction, but we certainly care a lot about these types of things, these shared resources.
Yeah, I was really interested when Marcella brought that up, because it's not something that's been on my mind, and I need more information, so it would be good if we could have a discussion about it at another time.
There's some buzzing happening, Margie, on your line.
I don't know what's causing that, but I'll turn off my microphone.
Maybe it's not Margie.
I think it's Kate. Thank you.
Weird.
Okay, you're good, Margie. Sorry.
And number 2, I'm just back to the 2022 list. Training town staff, boards and committees. Describe that to us. Like, what do you mean by that? Oh, you're muted, Matt.
Yes, that's one of the ones that actually came from the MAPC. So they recommend doing some trainings just around net zero technology, net zero definitions, and kind of creating maybe some regular process for keeping people up to date. Maybe there's establishing a budget for training staff so they can go and learn more. I think that would be a good way if we could even bring in a couple people to town to kind of present to boards and staff together, just to kind of get us all kind of thinking about these things in a shared way. Because although the sustainability committee has become more experts over time, we're not necessarily professionals in these areas. So I think sometimes it's a little better to have somebody who actually is in the field giving the information. So we're all kind of on the same page.
So for instance, I mean, like our planning board right now is actually very construction industry heavy, right? And we have a great deal of knowledge on our committee right now, but that's not always the case. So, you would be saying that, that an education is provided where you could go and understand solar panels and ground source heat pumps and complete streets and things that make a sustainable community. Is that like what you had in mind, that kind of education to kind of help those that may not have that knowledge or need a refresher of that knowledge? Or
yeah, like we may have people, maybe I'm just gonna say, building department or another department of the town that have been here a while, who maybe they did most of their training like a decade ago, so maybe things have changed. That's kind of where I was thinking about it, but I'm interested in hearing, from your committee, what areas you want to learn more about, if there are certain areas that you think it would be more helpful to train on, or speakers you would recommend.
Yeah, I mean, I have to give that some thought. I was just kind of trying to understand like who obviously I assume that like any town staff could sign up, but I assume it would be directed at the planning board, the design review committee versus the town clerk, where our job apps, those things come into our decisions. So just I'm trying to understand where that's directed at.
Yeah, and it could also be a couple other thoughts on that. Like we're talking about doing a tree bylaw. A goal of that is carbon sequestration. So, maybe we bring someone in who's more of an expert on the science behind that, so we all understand why we're recommending certain types of trees rather than others. Or could bring in someone who's an expert on, maybe a planning director from a city that's done some innovations in green codes or things like that. Could be another idea.
And then what about the outreach and engagement with the business community? As part of I'm not very active anymore, but a part of the ABA, the Business Association, for a long time. And how do you, what are the interactions? What are you thinking of there?
Yeah, and that one I'll just point out, and it's not necessarily like a planning piece, but I think it would work well to do it in tandem with the planning board. But it's just knowing that there are developers, businesses in town that are more affected by this energy transition than others. So beginning to kind of reach out to them and understand what the impacts are at a high level, so that we know who the allies are, who might be potential critics or people that we need to kind of win over. And those types of things are helpful, I think, whenever we're trying to create change.
Okay. I think those are my questions right now. Anyone else have anything from on the list?
I mean, I don't have questions. It's more kind of a comment as someone who's worked closely with Matt and Margie, more of a comment of kind of, I think the planning board needs to think about long-term what our role is relative to this document. I think partly it's a question for Matt and Margie, sort of, what do you hope to do with this document moving forward? What do you need from us? Are you viewing us as, and I don't think we've actually discussed this. I don't think I've discussed this with Matt and Margie. I did not prepare for today. I apologize. I think I missed Matt's email about today. But do you see us, Matt, as being kind of a project management team with you to move these items forward in 2022? Do you see yourself presenting this document to the select board first? Like, what are you envisioning as the next step?
I'm thinking both. I think we will be sharing this document with the select board at some point, with some other things maybe that aren't planning related as well. And I think, I also, I think so many of these things are dependent upon that I want to know. It's kind of a large body of work. So we do need to be thoughtful about how we approach it. And I think we would probably come with more refined versions of some of these to you, but we would also love to partner with you early on, wherever it makes sense to you. So we want your involvement as much as you're willing, I guess.
And I guess to add to that is, I think I got involved because the sustainability committee had asked for someone from the planning board to sit on a group that would create this document, right? So I feel like my piece of it is done. However, I'm more than happy to continue if the planning board wants to almost like project manage the 2022 pieces that involve the planning board. I'm more than happy to continue to work with Matt and Margie to create that checklist or whatever it is that we as a planning board want to be part of. So I'm kind of suggesting that is a possible role for us to sort of continue to work with Matt and Margie and the sustainability committee to actually make these things happen in 2022, whatever they are, right? That's one way to handle that as well.
I mean, I think it's good. I think it would be good to have a continuing role if you have the time and the ability. I'm looking at the list of, selfishly perhaps, of what on this list, would help to make the job of the planning board and thus my job easier, right? What can we help to, that things that we already have in place? One is that checklist, right? If it has already come up in the projects here, those are on the right path, if not perfect. I would never claim that, but it's at least out there. But other things I see on this list could be helpful too. Like, the EV guidelines, those are already coming into our projects and things that we're putting into agreements and things, so that would be, I assume, part of that checklist as well. And it might be something you already mentioned, Matt, in your email. Other things I'm interested in, I would say are way down in 24, 25. And the zoning, the three things that are marked zoning changes. I admit I do not know what climate smart parking is. You can explain that in a minute. But the transit oriented development and zoning for multifamilies are things that we are going to be dealing with, kind of dealing with now and dealing with very soon as projects come up and things like the MBTA communities comes into maybe in greater play. And to understand what those mean in terms of sustainability. And this also wraps into with the comprehensive plan, right? That these things bring together issues of planning for the community. They bring together issues of sustainability. They bring together issues of housing, which is also going to be a high demand thing, and if we look at these together, we can hopefully make solutions that can see Ashland some decades into the future. So some of those things, like I said, that are way in 24, 25, it would be good to kind of understand what role does sustainability play, what do we need to be looking at now to know where we want to be in 24, 25. I think that's knowledge that's, a discussion that's way out there on your list, but kind of is in front of the board real kind of currently, of discussions that we've had. So there might be the list might be I assume it's all kind of in flux, not that things move to 2022, but the knowledge and the understanding is kind of fluid, throughout the list.
Yeah, I think that's right. And it's good to have feedback about the things that you're seeing in projects now and concerned with. What we could do is begin research on those pieces earlier so that we can at least start having some conversations around it, with the eye of maybe codifying some things in bylaws, later if that's what it takes.
Yeah, because I think from and I can't say my knowledge is up to date, but I think I have a good idea of what, say, the transit-oriented development and the zoning for multifamilies, at least a good piece of that, what that entails. But I would love to understand and have the board understand, and our design review committee understand, what does that mean in terms of sustainability? Because if sustainability is something we are promoting, then this is part of it that we need to understand too. And that those are the kind of things that I'm talking about, that the questions aren't necessarily just easy, like, oh, let's just plant more trees. Yeah, everyone likes trees, but it's just not that. Usually the answers aren't that easy. And there's choices that have to be made. And so I'm interested in let's just get to the hard questions and start to figure it out. So.
Yeah. No, I think from the sustainability standpoint, we've seen how complex these issues can be, just working on the tree bylaw a little bit, while working on it a lot. So I think, we understand there's areas where there needs to be some give and take, and we're just trying to, I guess, push as far as we can with that goal of being sustainable and reaching this really difficult, target and transitioning our whole energy system. It's a big change. So I think we're just trying to bring a lot of focus to it, whereas it may be something that's kind of comes up. This is the time we would want to push to codify some changes, maybe where they were things that are just happening as conversations. We want to kind of like assert the values of the town through this process if we can. And I think probably a lot of other towns are going through this kind of change too.
Yeah, and while all those things will eventually, hopefully, feed into the comprehensive plan, which we also talked about tonight, we can't wait that long, right? We can't wait until town meeting signs off on a comprehensive plan. We're going to have a lot of decisions that we make in the next 2 years. So, so that knowledge that you guys are working toward and gaining and are thinking about, is at least knowledge I feel that not only our board, but other boards need kind of right away, so that we can all be kind of tackling these problems together with current problems, not problems that'll happen in a couple years. So
I have a comment about, oh, go ahead.
Go ahead, Kate. Go ahead.
So related to, like, it looks like we are, fingers crossed, still going ahead with comprehensive plan. And I sort of agree with that. We can't necessarily wait, but I think there's a way to add another coding to that list, or what are things, because I would like to get to the meat of bylaws, right? And I know we can't rewrite our whole zoning that the town has not given attention to for a very long time instantaneously. But of that list or topics or concerns could be a bylaw while we're working on a comprehensive plan. So there's some things, maybe the tree bylaw, I believe that's, I guess I'm naive, but I think that's high probability that people want it, the people I talk to. And maybe that doesn't really matter to the comprehensive plan. And maybe some of those others, like Trish, say that maybe we take a stab at a bylaw change anyway, but we know it's going to have to be tweaked with comprehensive plan. So I think if Michael Herbert's still on, he's one of the people who said, let's not let the perfect get in the way of I'm not using the right words, but progress, right? And then maybe some of those are absolutely, we're just going to muck it up if we don't wait for the comprehensive plan. So I think that's in among all your other coding, maybe a way to push it forward and then have the board work with you saying, can we attack 2 or 3 of these for the fall? Maybe not, maybe there isn't enough time because we're also working push comprehensive plan and we keep getting a lot of cases, hearings. But I think if we don't try to push for that, we end up with nothing, no progress. So I would like to try to get to that.
Yeah, I think that's what I'm saying too, that we're going to be making some decisions, whether they're planning board decisions, well, planning board project decisions and planning board zoning decisions that are going to come into play, I would assume, before the comprehensive plan. And what we hope is that we make decisions that are, like Kate said, not perfect, but at least strongly in line with where we end up with the comprehensive plan. I would hope that's true. Hope we're not, I don't think we'd go too far off the mark, but.
Are there plans to involve a consultant to help us guide through these things at all? Because there's only so much you can do as folks who are not technically involved on this day to day. I mean, that's a lot to take on. I'm just amazed at the amount of work that as a committee that you've done, but it's very technical. So having a consultant who probably will help you speed up as well. I don't know if that's even in your pipeline or if you had an opportunity to reach out.
Yeah, it's actually, I think we're closer to that now that we at the last town meeting, we passed the framework, and part of that was sort of establishing a governance process to work with the select board. And I think at this point, we're saying, here's the list, and we'll start to identify, these are the things we can move forward with our own expertise. And these are the things that we don't really have a good handle on how to move forward. So we need experts on. So I think that might be coming soon.
And Peter, I think there's a new sustainability person going to be jumping in at some point.
Yes. Excuse me. Yes, the town has offered the position, and it has been accepted by a lovely person named Samantha Riley, and she will start August 1st, I think.
That's great.
Yep. Sorry, news hasn't came out quicker. I was out on vacation last week, and it all happened last week. So.
Yeah, I'm sorry to put you on the spot there, Peter.
It's okay. No. I was just
relevant to the conversation.
I was trying to clean up the comp plan thing letter. So, but yes, no, we just hired a person, and hopefully we'll be able to fill that position, which obviously has been vacant for an extended period of time.
That's going to be, very helpful as we move forward.
All right, so I don't know. I don't know. Maybe if we're at a good stopping point for tonight, I don't want to cut anyone off if someone has a direction they wanted to go. For me, the first thing on this, number one thing that it really is happening right away is that checklist. I think that is something that we could start going back and forth and get design review committee and on something that we can really put together as not just one board or one committee, but a group of us to really to get something that we all, can support, and that could be a very useful tool right away. And then, like I said, I'm very interested in some of the longer term zoning issues and knowing some of the things that are going to be coming down our pipeline, both in terms of policies at the state level and in terms of things that are going to come up in Ashland, so that we get a better understanding of that too. So
that's great. So we could continue to partner with you on the checklist, and then we'll identify things that are bigger issues that may not be more controversial that we can put some more time and thought into down the road.
Right. Yep.
Great. And we'll work with Anna on the checklist. Is that?
Yeah, I'm more than happy to participate. I think Marcelo was carbon copied on some of those invitations to the meetings. I think with his architecture experience, it might be helpful for him to be more involved in the checklist piece. So I would continue to include me and Marcelo if Marcelo is interested. I'm
definitely interested. Happy to read and comment. I just don't have the flexibility of time in general. but when I can attend, as I've done in the past, I will. But please do copy me, and I'm happy to offer my thoughts.
Great.
And Matt, I was thinking you may not need me as much in like a working style as far as like working sessions. You know, maybe the sustainability committee on its own would want to come up with a checklist and get it to me and Marcelo type of thing for a meeting. So because you guys may have ideas as to the checklist that you may not need me to kind of sit there for, but giving feedback, being part of it, I'm more than happy to help.
Yeah, that sounds like a good approach. That makes sense. Thank you. Well, I appreciate your taking the time for this tonight. It's been good talking with you about this.
Yeah, I'm glad. I mean, all those cancellations of projects are going to come back to haunt the planning board real soon. But I'm glad it worked out that that we could give you guys then more time tonight to really discuss these issues while we're still awake, because often we get pretty tired at the end of the night. So that was good. So, all right. On that note, we just have a few other business related things for the planning board, but sustainability committee, we'll see you very soon. Bye. All right. Hello. Good, that was good. I'm just continuing with our list, and then we'll have one meeting minutes at the bottom. Item D is inclusionary zoning. The only thing I have to say about that is that a Google poll went out for the inclusionary zoning Ashland for All committee. Various dates went out this month and over the next month for meeting dates. So we haven't met yet, but we will be meeting. So if when we have a meeting date for that, I can let Peter know. He can send it out if anyone's interested. The next item is CPC. CPC was supposed to have a meeting this week, but there was no quorum, so we did not have a meeting. The only thing for me to put on the table is that my term is up, I believe, August 31st. I think I mentioned this before. I was filling in for Joe the remainder of his term. So it hasn't, I don't think it's even been a full year that I've been on the CPC. But if anyone if that's a particular interest of theirs and anyone wanted to jump in, we can definitely talk about that. If everyone's plates are full or leading in other directions, I will, when my term comes up on August 31st, I will just stay in the position. But if someone else is interested, please let me know. Next thing is the Scenic Roads outreach. I thought this was very timely because I'm sure you all saw that there was an email that came in about cutting down trees on scenic roads that Peter addressed. So that was one of the things that we talked about when it's not just an opinion letter from a resident, but it's something very technical, I guess, procedural. That Peter jumped in to take care of that. And so, but it's one of the things, so I imagine, Peter, that'll be probably coming before us eventually, right? The potential cutting down of trees.
A Franklin Road. Yeah, so I was actually out there and I got to take a look at it. But yeah, and just to note, I'm working with Roy, the DPW, and he has a list of town-owned trees that need to be analyzed and looked at. So that will be kind of coming in, and I'm going to take a look at those trees over on Franklin as well.
And then related to that, the Winter Street tree is still waiting for appropriate tree planting weather. July likely is not it.
No, it's on our bucket list. I've talked to Roy, DPW, about it, and we're going to hold off until a better planting season.
And lastly on that, didn't at one point, didn't you say, correct me if I'm wrong, that kind of a letter to people along scenic roads maybe had already been developed or was in the process or someone was looking at it
Mhm.
or?
So previous to Frank Bakashian, the previous sustainability manager, he
Okay,
made a draft of it. I can't say it was probably what I was looking for, but something was done, and I'm going to use the basis in the organization of what he put together. But that's one of the first things I'm going to ask the new sustainability director to take a look at, take a bite into, as we're adding some more depth to the office and on certain projects.
yeah, that's great. And sorry, Anna, go
No,
ahead.
I was going to say, I remember we had talked about the planting of this tree as a potential kind of public reach out moment. I don't remember if it was Deepa who suggested that, but someone did. And so I do wonder if we can time the release of that letter maybe with that planting of that tree in some fashion as a way to kind of educate and build some positive energy around it. It's not, anyway, just kind of thinking about that.
I think it'd be a good thing to shoot for, if not before. If this is a great little task for someone to get their feet wet as a new sustainability position. And unless someone else on the planning board wants to step in, I'm also happy to meet with them and for the three of us or whatever to look at that letter so that will give me a chance to meet the new sustainability person. But as you feel the timing is right, Peter, so no pressure.
Yeah, I know it's definitely on our radar, and I do want to do more around the scenic roads and education, and I think that this is a good foothold for us to educate about issues that the planning board has to undertake.
I mean, my personal preference would be that the planning board does have the chair's kind of signature on it, so that if it's drafted by the new person, which is a wonderful kind of first experience, that it have that kind of what's the word I'm looking for? Endorsement of the planning board and the chair through that, and as a way to sort of say, okay, we the planning board is who the public would go to, right, for these kinds of things, and we the planning board are sharing this information with folks who live on these streets. So I would think that we as a planning board would want to review that draft and have some input so that Tricia can sign something that we are in agreement on.
Yeah, I think that's fine. I think having the new sustainability person on it too, I think also gives it a, hey, it's not just a law in Ashland, but it's also because we care about sustainable issues. So having it be kind of collaborative. I also think it's really about keeping it simple too. To get a long letter about policy in the mail, you're not going to read it.
No, it needs to be fun, exciting. It needs to be engaging. Yeah,
engaging. That's right. It's saying the information is out there. Please seek it before you cut down a tree. So not necessarily laying out all the details in the text. So okay, great. I assume there's nothing else on MBTA communities.
Nope, still waiting to hear.
Any other reports? Doesn't have to be a super formal report, but from any other committee members or town manager.
I can only report that I'm going to be out the last week of July, so I think that next meeting I'm not going to be able to attend.
Okay. All right. Okay, if nothing else, Peter, do you want to go through applications?
Sure. The planning board has not received any new applications. I am expecting an application for 10 to 50 Main Street next week and the following week. The zoning board of appeals, the zoning board of appeals has, accepted an application for a Starbucks at the 399 Union Street, which is the location of the current Walgreens. That project will be coming to the planning board after the zoning board of appeals. The first stop in the zoning board of appeals is to hear the request for a drive-through. Then after that, it will come to planning board for site plan approval. Design review obviously is triggered, and as well as some work within a wetland. And so that is a project that is going to touch all committees, and I'm sure will be talked about within time. The other update I do want to give is item C. To this point, the legislature in Massachusetts has not extended the virtual public meeting extension, or the extension to allow public meetings to happen via Zoom. So today on the 14th, we are allowed to meet via Zoom. Tomorrow, the 15th, it expires. And so hopefully within the next 2 weeks, the legislature will act and extend the the virtual public hearing and or public meetings. They'll extend the ability for us to have Zoom meetings. So I think everyone, every community, every board is waiting and watching to see what the legislature does, but hopefully something comes out fairly soon. And if they do not, we'll be back in person on the 28th. But I will be surprised if the legislature does not act. Any questions, concerns, issues?
I mean, on the one hand, it would be great to be back in the room, but the virtual certainly has allowed, I mean, how many meetings have I attended remotely? Like a bunch, right? For better or worse, I guess. So whatever comes, we'll deal with it. So.
I think it's gonna come. I think it's just, it's gonna be wrapped up into some other legislative item. So
okay.
Other than that, I'm all set. And do we get the minutes out to you guys for the 26th?
You did.
Yeah.
Okay. Awesome.
Before we go to the minutes, is there opening up to the board one last time? If anyone has anything else that we're missing here?
Nope.
Okay. All right, then we are looking at meeting minutes from May 26th, I think.
I reviewed those and I have no changes.
I'm here.
I'm all set as well.
Yeah, they look good to me too.
Let's see. Okay, yep, I'm good. All right, then no changes?
Nope.
Okay.
Okay, then I will make a motion to approve the meeting minutes from May 26th as what's the word? As they are.
I'll second that.
And a roll call vote.
Deepa Venkatai.
Anna Tesmanitsky, aye.
Marcelo Hona, aye.
And Trisha Kendall, aye. So, and I believe we are up to date on meeting minutes, all the ones that we have. So
We took care of a lot of them at the last meeting.
yeah. Is there, I know there's a little delay because we need someone looks at these tapes and comes up with the meeting minutes.
Mm-hmm.
Is there any way to get them a little bit quicker? Can we catch up so that so right now we would be on the first meeting in June, that we would be the next meeting minutes, and we're at the, is there any way we could get them quicker, or are we kind of pushing it already for the person that's doing the meeting minutes.
I can reach out and see if we can speed up the turnaround time, but I think as soon as we get them, we send them right out.
Yeah,
But,
no,
you know, who does them for us does them very well and professionally, and has been for many years. And she formerly was an Ashland resident. So I am happy to reach out, but I also don't want to ask too much.
no, I understand. I mean, it's only 3 meetings out.
Mhm.
So no, it's not a big pressure item. I just didn't know, I don't know how the process works. So
Yeah,
if it,
so
so
who does them and watches these videos and you know, completes them as fast as she can.
okay, it's
you know,
fine. Don't-
And I
don't-
think she does a great job
Yeah.
and professional. So
Yeah, it's not a problem. I don't want to make waves there.
okay.
I'm just always trying to remember what happened, like, 6 weeks ago. That's all. My
Yep.
failing memory.
Mhm.
So, all right. I just want to remind people that that we're usually setting the agenda like the Thursday or Friday before the meeting. So we always take another look at it on Monday. It goes out to the planning board. So if you have any agenda items, if something is on your mind, make sure you send them to me or to Peter, so that we can look at them and get them on the agenda if possible. And when the agenda comes out on typically on Monday, usually there's a little window, then you can update the agenda on Tuesday if need be, to look at the agenda when you get it to see if there's something you think is missing or something you think is wrong or something, that you would like on there. Because then we can make that happen after Tuesday. Basically, there's nothing we can do about a new item with open meeting law. So keep that in mind. Everyone has a voice in setting that agenda. It just needs to come through me and Peter as we set the agenda for the next meeting. So, all right. Anything else? Then everyone enjoy your Friday. Have a great weekend, and thank you.
All right. Thank you,
I
everybody.
guess we have
Have
to
a great
officially
weekend.
adjourn
I
though,
think
don't
we
we?
need to adjourn first. Yeah. So close.
Someone else make the motion. Enough.
I'll make
I'll
the
make-
motion
go ahead.
to adjourn. I'll make the motion to adjourn the meeting.
All right, a second.
I'll second it.
A roll call vote.
Blanket eye.
Anna Tesmanitsky, aye.
Marcelo Hona, aye.
Passengers, aye.
And Tricia Kendall, aye. All right, thank you, everyone.
Have a great night, everyone.
Bye, guys.